Dolly berries. All right. Hey, what's up, guys? This is Maui. Don't forget to subscribe and all that. Today we're going to be doing a Ruby 20 with my DH. I didn't quite time this run. We didn't time, but it's still a good run to look at and learn from if you're trying to get a little bit more of the routes down. I'm not really trying to make videos to be like the number one DH tank and say that I'm the best and I know everything, but you can learn a lot from watching what I do right and what I do wrong. So let's go ahead and get started on the video. Hopefully you get something out of it. I'll be kind of speeding up and slowing down and the music won't really sync, but we're getting started, we're getting something out, so that's cool. Let me know in the comments if you think I suck or if you think I'm really good or if you think I'm like whatever. If you think I am saying something wrong in the video or right, also let me know in the comments there. Look forward to hearing your reactions, guys, and thank you for watching the video. Let's get started. Good, they lusted. Dang, I didn't even have to say anything. Love it. Pros. We got pros on our hands, guys. Oh, affix, I didn't even check. So this week the affixes are fortified, sanguine, volcanic, and thundering. Because it's fortified, I'm taking the pulls a little bit slower than I would if it was tyrannical. I can usually do like 3 or 4 at a time on the first pull if there's a lust, but I just kind of wanted to go easy on the healer and not freak everybody out, so I just did double pulls all the way through. The sanguine, you can see I'm kind of pulling them all over the freaking place. So, that's how it goes with sanguine. I probably could stand to do it a little bit less now that I'm looking at it. As far as volcanic goes as an affix, it's pretty much like in my opinion, it's a free affix, especially if you're tanking, because you can just soak them and it doesn't really matter. It does hurt the DPS sometimes one-shotting them, but yeah, you all know that. But let's go ahead and continue on with our video. Yo, people dying. People be dying. Trying to do the interrupts. Watch your feet. I do a lot of line of sight tanking or LOS tanking for the sanguine just to get them out of the little pools. You'll see that throughout the first floor quite a bit. I don't really do that at all after, maybe a little bit at the end. But if you're looking for a way to kind of get the line of sight going, there I went a little bit extravagant, went all the way to the back so that I could pull them out of the sanguine a bit more so they would stop casting. But that works pretty well for a DH. You have that kind of bursty movement that is maybe a little bit more consistent than on a warrior or a pally. But you can get back to the guy pretty quick and it's not that big of a deal. So those are some DH advantages. With these pulls in general, I try to not pull too much because I want to be able to do some of the key interrupts. If I'm running and I am doing this first floor, and I'm with Pugs, by the way, the only person I know is the healer. Shout out to Blueberry. If I am kind of doing this run, I want to make sure I can cover all the key interrupts on my own. And as I go through the first floor, I get an idea of what the interrupt capability is of my group. And if the group is really good with the interrupts, I might get a little bit more bold as I go along. But this group was kind of like medium on interrupts. We had a DH who was doing a little bit less than me, I think, if I remember correctly. And, that's just really not enough. If you're a tank and you're able to interrupt more than a DH, it means the DH isn't really doing his job. I have to worry about aggro and I'm kiting. Like if I'm LOSing something, for example, I can't really interrupt. So because, I'm LOS from the mob, so it's his job to get more of those in. Of course, you can technically interrupt with an LOS. It just doesn't show on your details because you're, behind a pillar. You can make it so they can't finish their cast. So long as the cast is on the tank itself. A lot of the mobs down here at the bottom of Ruby don't they'll target a random DPS or healer. So even more so, reason for interrupts from healers and DPS to get them out of sanguine and also to keep them from blowing up your face. So let's go ahead and continue watching the run. By the way, I was streaming this run live on Twitch. Make sure to follow my Twitch if you want to catch me, twitch.tv/dhmaui. So let's talk about this pool right here. I'm going to go in and prison this guy so we can walk past him and then pool the big dragon dude. He is a beast on fortified. He hits harder than maybe any mob in the game. So if you guys know of a guy who hits the tank harder that's not a boss, let me know. You can see he almost kills me there. I didn't take him quite seriously enough. I popped meta and pulled some of my cooldowns out. I should have probably did that a bit earlier. It's just you also have to worry about not losing aggro on him because I knew that these guys were going to go ham on him as soon as we went through that hole. It's kind of a little bit of a tricky pull because you have to go through the door and get him out of that area because you don't want the pat to get pulled. But you also have to do enough damage and mitigate enough so you don't both die or lose aggro so your DPS die. So it's not like the hardest in the game, but you just it's a hard balance between keeping aggro and not dying. Yeah, I actually did die there. I didn't realize that. So as you can see, death is they got me between phases. So we only lost like one person or something. But this was one of the sketchy pulls in the game. Partially my fault. I got to say that this was on Tuesday, and I wasn't really aware that this guy was going to hit this hard on a 20, so I didn't take it quite seriously enough. If I had timed my mitigation a little bit better and my aggro generation and been prepared and saved it on the last pool, it would not have been an issue. So just make sure when you're going into this pool with this guy that you have something to do both a lot of damage and mitigate a lot of damage because he hits freaking hard, and you're going to have to go LOS the healer for a second, most likely, unless you're super synced up, and which is what I did, and which is why I died. So I went to go here. You can see what I'm doing is I'm re-CCing the mob. It's not really necessary because we ended up just rezzing the priest anyway. But you know, I just went ahead and did it to make sure that if the priest did decide to release, they would be able to get around. I also want to note here that I made a huge mistake. You probably saw that, and it's probably one of the greatest mistakes I did as a tank in this run. I actually went ahead and pulled before the healer had mana. I thought maybe because it was fortified that the boss would be a little bit more of a pushover, and I got a little gung-ho and I went and pulled, and you're going to see the result of that because if you look at the healer right now, the healer has like 0 mana, and that's my fault. I should have given ourselves the extra 5 or 6 seconds to get the mana back, and then everyone wouldn't have died. The healer wasn't able to keep people up because, you know, I don't blame them. They didn't have mana, and that was my fault. And that, at least for me, that was one of the big mistakes that I made as a tank on this run, and a big part of why we didn't end up timing at the end. There's some other things that come up along the way, but you know, always wait for your healer to get mana. I know that sounds like super basic, but it's something that I have a hard time with sometimes. Just because coming out of that last pull, generally you don't have a lot of mana that you need because it's not a heavy healing fight, but the healer died, so that is, and just got res. So in this case, I kind of blew it, and I go on autopilot a little bit sometimes. I'm not the smartest tank, and I do little dumb things, but I try my best, you know, and hopefully you can learn from some of my mistakes. So let's go ahead and watch the rest of the boss fight. You see that guy died here. This is a little bit of an interesting thing. I think this freaking DPS was AFK, bro, because I tried to res him like 10 times. I have an engineering res, which, by the way, for tanks, if you don't have a B res, super handy. I literally popped my engineering res on him like 3 times. The cooldown went up, so I don't really know what happened. I think he just wasn't taking it. I think he figured that because we didn't have a B-res class in the group, that nobody was going to B-res him. And I actually did B-res him, and it was a disaster because we could have finished quite a bit faster if he didn't AFK during the boss. Anyway, I'm not bitter. Are you bitter? I'm not bitter. So, speaking more on this, this fight is actually really good for DHs and bears because anytime you have a situation where you have a lot of enemies and you have to tank, for DH, if we have a lot of enemies, we get more leech because we use our AoE on the enemies, especially if we have tier. And because with tier, you can use the, what is it called? The orb thing. I got to get better with the names of stuff. Uh, the little AoE thing that gives you lots of leech. And it's great for the little dragons. So that phase actually, I find in general for this boss, I have no problem tanking it pretty much indefinitely. I can tank that forever. Bears are the same way. We get a lot more of a shield on a bear if you have a lot of enemies. So we like tanking big groups of weak enemies. For other tanks, that might not be like a phase that they particularly find easy, but as a DH with with my particular set of skills, that's a pretty easy thing to deal with. Okay, so we're coming up. I think we definitely cleared this boss, but it's not just about clearing and not dying. I think a lot of new Mythic Plus runners think that not dying means success, but this was definitely a failure as a boss fight, as we fought the boss with 3 people for the majority of the fight, losing like a couple extra minutes, maybe that much, maybe less, but still, regardless, it was not. I wouldn't consider it a successful fight because we lost so much time. And again, it's a timed mechanic. So with Mythic Plus, it's all about finishing on time. It's not about not dying. A lot of people need to kind of figure that out. So dying is okay, but not timing is not. That's the win. Uh, that's what you got to do to win. And a lot of people think that not dying means a success. So that's why a lot of people don't like my tanking, I guess. But anyway, we got this boss. I might skip ahead a little bit during the dragon flying here because, it's kind of dead time. So, and you don't really need to see the dragon fly. But yeah, looks like we got him. I'll speed it up to the end of the fight here. Okay, so we're coming up here on the first Drake, the Thunder Drake. This guy is a pain because he has this breath ability, and it's really hard to see the the collision boxes for it. Like people often get hit by it and not feel that they are in it because it's not like a clear tube of frontal. So just be very careful if you're a DPS or a healer not to stand in it. Also, with this guy, it's very important with the tank. You can see I'm facing my back to that column. He does a knockback that will straight knock you, like, if you're like by the stairs, he'll knock you like off into the middle, which has definitely happened before to me. So, it's happened to other tanks, maybe not to me. I don't know. I'm perfect, but it will definitely knock you back and put you somewhere you don't want to be, whether it's into another group that you don't want to accidentally pull or into that big hole in the middle of the level that you can fall into. So just watch so that you're facing your back to something that will stop you from flying in the air. We actually lusted on that guy. And in Fortified, I tend to lust on trash pretty much on every run because it's not really usually the bosses that stop you from finishing the run, and the bosses tend to die pretty quick. It's more about getting as many lusts in as you can. So by lusting on that guy, it's more of a time saver. It doesn't reduce the difficulty of the run. It is probably still easier to lust on bosses. So if you are doing fort and you consider it like heavily prog and you're afraid that you're going to die on the boss on a fort run, then I would say wait and lust on the bosses. But if you're pretty confident you're going to beat the bosses, and I was feeling pretty confident with this group that we weren't going to have much trouble on the second boss, I would say lust on trash. The drakes are great for lusting because they are just a ton of health that you got to go through. So it's a really nice place for people to just burst and blow your cooldowns and get them done real quick, and it saves a ton of time. You can actually skip the drakes. You can't skip the drakes with this route. If you remember, I CC'd one of the mobs and we kind of snuck past against the wall. If you don't do that run, you can either skip the Drake or there's a couple packs in here. Like you see these pats right here, they are skippable. If you want to skip them, you just run along the side and you wait for them to walk by. They're not the easiest group to skip. There's another group similar to them, the little three packs. You can skip them, and you can also skip the Drake. I would say skipping the Drakes is a little bit more complicated because they have a really big like aggro radius, where these guys it's a little bit simpler to skip. You can even CC one of them with Imprison or Sap maybe. Sap's a little bit more glitchy. Imprison's preferable. Something like that. You can soothe them, the Mind Soothe, not the DN Rage Soothe, but the Priest Soothe. So there's just a lot of ways to get around these unnecessary packs. If you end up pulling more at the bottom, you can work out your own percent how you want. But for the particular pathing I did, I needed both 2 Drakes and I needed these little 3 packs. And I don't think the 3 packs are really that hard because most of the damage is interruptible. Now, that's the next thing I want to talk about for these groups. If you're tanking or if you're on DPS, try to interrupt these Cinder Weavers as much as you freaking can. They just cast constantly, and they also have a non-interruptible ability that you can stop with stuns. If you're the tank or if you're a DPS, try to just get as many of those Cinder Weaver casts reduced. Also, there is a big AoE that goes out with the big guy. Just make sure to try to mitigate that. I didn't have to do it because I got a proc on my shield, which was great. And really with tanking, you don't really have to worry about the AoE too much. But for DPS and heals, that will kill you one shot if you're pretty under geared, and it'll take half your health if you're geared. So just make that one right there that just went off. So just make sure to have your mitigations ready for that or have your health topped off. You can see we lost a couple guys with that one there. So clearly not using mitigation or not topped off, and that's kind of what happens. I'm pulling him away just to kind of really force him out of the sanguine. And also what I'm doing here is I'm not doing the route where you go the full way around. I do the full way around sometimes if I want to skip certain mobs, but for this particular time, I'm doing a double back, so I don't run around the full circle of the ring. And the reason I'm doing that is because I am going to kill everything, and I'm also trying to time the Drake fights with cooldowns. I do go around, like I said, all the way sometimes, and usually it has to do with wanting to skip certain packs. I don't really have any packs I want to skip, so I just double back. This group right here is a common group for people to pack. As you can see, there's a lot of room on the left there that you can go around them, and you don't even have to use a soothe or a CC. You can just hug the left side of the wall and skip these guys. So if you don't need the percent, this is a great group to skip. Most people will skip them coming around. If they do the full circle around this ring, they'll skip them, coming out of the pool. So they'll be coming from the opposite direction and they'll skip this pack. Great pack to skip. I didn't need to skip because we needed the percent because we CC'd a guy and hugged the wall at the bottom. But if you do need to skip, if you do need a little bit less percent, this is a great pack to skip. I did a run with my 100 earlier today, and I actually pulled them with misdirect, thinking that the tank would need them, and I kind of blew it. So just be prepared if you're DPS. This is a common one to skip, so go ahead and skip this one if the tank is going to skip it. Just be aware that he might or she might or might not skip it. Don't try to misdirect it to the tank like I did. We're going to skip through most of this because I talked about the Cinder Weavers. Oh, yeah, one more thing. The Flame Dancers, if you have Arcane Torrent or some type of Mass Dispel like a Priest or a Dispel, make sure to use that on the Flame Dancers. You can cut down a lot of the damage that the Flame Dancers do. When the Flame Dancers are almost dead, they do this like little thing where they throw little puddles everywhere. And if you just use an Arcane Torrent right as they go into that phase, you can just make it so that they don't even do the phase at all. I don't know if I'm going to do it at all here. I was having a hard time with that since it was Sanguine and Arcane Torrent requires you to be within a certain distance. So if you are DPS, maybe that's something you can be aware of. I know that the Demon Hunter has Consume Magic, and let's see if he uses it. I don't know if I was even watching. I can't really see that well. So here comes the Flame Dance in a minute. Where is it? There it was. Yeah, you saw that we Somebody did it. It was probably the DH because consume magic is great for that. The mage can also use spell reflect, I believe. Let me know in the comments if that's wrong. But oh, there, see, you saw he did the flame dance and we stopped it. So if you want to like just make it a little bit safe for everybody, if you're a priest or a demon hunter or a mage or whatever class that has a dispel, make sure to stop that flame dance from happening. So here we're coming up on flame gullet. Uh, I would say this is the easier of the two drakes, but I'm gonna go ahead and pull him because I need him for percent. Um, I thought that this guy has a knockback, but I don't think he does because I didn't get knocked back at all. So if you know if Flame Gullet has a knockback, let me know in the comments. But I don't think he does. So he's a pretty easy percent in my opinion, but he is not a fast percent. So just make sure if you pull him, you are losing a lot of time because of all the time it takes to do the damage, and you will have to probably blow some cooldowns to get rid of him. He's got a ton of health. He's comparable to a boss in Fort, so just you gotta weigh. I understand why some people would skip him, and it's kind of like up to you as a tank if you want to skip him and kill more guys at the bottom, or if you want to kill him. I like him. I like killing him because I feel like nobody ever really wipes on him, so it's a little bit of a safer call. But those are the kind of decisions you have to make as a tank. I'm going to go ahead and skip to the next boss here, and we can talk about that because I pretty much covered all the mechanics. Okay, let's go. Okay, we're coming up on the second boss here at Ruby. Now, this boss is a little bit complicated, but he's also kind of easy. Tank positioning is huge for this boss, which is why I kind of stopped it here and I want to talk about it a little bit. Now, I am telling him to lust. We actually took a little bit longer doing the ring than I had hoped. So lust is back up, so we're going to go ahead and use it. It's pretty clear to me that we're not going to time at this point. So what we're going to do is we're going to lust here, and then we're going to get multiple lust for the bosses at the end just to kind of clear them out faster. If you are running behind, you can utilize the patching mechanic. So let's get back to this boss. Basically, what you really need to worry about is where you're positioning the boss in relationship with your DPS and healers, with relationship to your group. So you can see I just jumped a huge leap there, and I'm going to turn around and make it so that I'm pulling him into a place to where the next boulder will go into the flame. And I try to also position him so that the other DPS are positioned in such a way so that they will also not feed the boulder. So as a DPS here, that was the DPS's fault. I could have kind of presented it, but you saw how we had the boulder go back in the direction that we're headed. We want the boulder going in the direction we came from. So by moving to the add, I moved the boss, which then made it so that the DPS baited the boulder into the wrong direction. So I'm trying again here. If you look at that DH, he's definitely in the wrong spot. He doesn't, and also with the ranged, I think the mage, he's also in a very terrible spot as well. You see how they're feeding those boulders right into the middle. That is not what you want to do if you're on DPS or heals. You want to keep feeding the boulders back into the fire so that you don't create more fire to walk on. So kind of a little bit of a difficult situation here. Also, as a tank, there's a huge dot that gets placed on you. It doesn't hurt me too bad because it's not tyrannical, but on tyrannical, I'd be really feeling it right now. So now we're like locked in because the boulders weren't fed correctly. So again, the DPS should come so that the fire is at their backs. They should stand where I'm standing, but they're all over there standing, wherever they want to stand. This is not right. They should be over by me. Fortunately, we lucked out and the boss was almost dead, so it worked. Here, I can do a pretty big pull usually. I don't have any of my cooldowns, so I'm kind of holding off a little bit. You can see one of the DPS tells me to go more. He's like, pull. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. I knew that there was a great chance of people dying here. One, because I didn't have the cooldowns for people to see. There he is, pull. I didn't have the cooldowns to hold the aggro, so I knew that probably there's a good chance somebody was going to get meleeed, which is part of why I was pulling it slower. I was making sure I had aggro on the warriors, and then I would come down and pull, and then I could kind of single target focus to generate aggro on the others. It worked out okay. We managed to get them all down, and I'm trying to interrupt the channeler now. That's the main thing I'm focusing on. When you're in these pools, just try to get those channelers from casting. That'll be a huge reduction of damage. Also, because it's sanguine, I'm going to have to move. A huge risk here is that the channelers will be stuck in the sanguine. So you can see here I did something good for a change. I actually pulled the warriors away while the channeler was channeling, enabling the puddles to be dropped away from him because he was not moving. If I had not done that, the channeler would be in the sanguine and he would keep his full health, which is not good. So here I jump back over to him now that I pulled the 2 sanguine guys out, and we can kill him there. And also too, the sanguine isn't where we're headed, so that's good. Over here, it's a similar thing. I always LOS this next pool. Some people will pull 2 channelers at once. I just haven't had a lot of success with that. You need a lot of AoE healing. People have to use mitigation. So I just want to finish the run at this point. It's very clear we're not going to time. So I'm waiting for the healer to get mana, and then I'm going to go and pull 1 group. It's pretty easy to keep aggro on 3 guys, so there's no right there. Interrupting the channeler here, and again I'm gonna have to try and LOS, so I'm gonna actually LOS into these little mini elemental guys, which is fine because they don't hurt me too much. And I also have Arcane Torrent, which reduces their health pretty much to 0. So I'm gonna jump over to them, I'm gonna Arcane Torrent them, and then I'm gonna also at the same time be LOSing people out of the puddle, because I don't want people in the puddle here. That is bad news bears. So we can see myself doing it here. Hold on, am I gonna do it? There's the puddle. So, oh, I pulled him back this way. So I didn't LOS, I just used distance. If you can do that, you can do that with these guys because they don't have a lot of ranged attacks. The channeler does have ranged attacks, so you might have to actually LOS him. There, the timer expired, so we're gonna go ahead and patch up here. I'm not going to use it on the next pull, but I will use a drum lust on the following pull just because we did patch, and then we can save the big lust, the good lust, the mage lust for the most difficult pull, and maybe one of the most difficult pulls in the game. Not so much mechanically, but just it's kind of a real gear check. So we're gonna do that one after this. I'm gonna fast forward a slide. So it looks like I actually lost the footage for the last boss, pro YouTuber here. But I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you what to do. This last pull, a lot of people will lust for it. So if you want to lust for this last channeler, he's pretty tough, so it's totally understandable. If you do lust on the boss, I would lust on the second phase where he mounts up on top of the dragon. That's when you need to do the most damage. Also, you want to make sure you tank this guy in the middle of the platform, and also try to keep everyone in the middle of the platform. If you do that, it'll make the fight a lot easier. And also just try to focus all your damage on the dragon himself. The dragon is much more difficult to deal with mechanically than the guy who's riding him. So just kill that guy, and it should pretty much all go pretty smoothly. Sorry, I don't have footage of that. I am learning this YouTube thing, but you know, it was a good video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave some comments, some likes, some dislikes, whatever. Tell me how bad I am. Tell me how good I am. Tell me how meh I am. And I will talk to you later. Farewell. Goodbye from the YouTubes.